Signs of high functioning depression. Well, first of all, depression, many people think that depression is just a caprice, that depression is just like someone not wishing to take action or someone not wanting to move on. But depression is not only that. Depression is also a pathology, which means depression is most of cases related to some genetical state, and it's chemical as well. So it means that when someone is depressed, there is, well, we can divide it into two parts: psychology and psychiatry. And psychiatry is like the context, like when you have propension for being a depressive person, and the psychology is everything that you input in your brain that you bring to your life, etc. And most of cases, the signs are very typical, and they're very like uh, very easy to see. And of course, what I'm going to share here is just some typical general features, but of course you have to see your doctor, and your doctor will tell you if you have depression or not. And sometimes the diagnosis is hard as well, because many other problems can be confused with depression or present the same symptoms. So of course, you have to, for example, when you lose someone that you love, that person dies, of course you'll be, let's say, depressive for some months, but it doesn't mean the depression, the pathological depression, because the pathological depression has nothing to do with what happens. Of course, when you have bad events going on, it's stronger. But even in very beautiful times, a depressive person is always depressed. So this is one of the points. A depressive person is never happy with their lives. They never feel fulfilled. They're always looking for something else. They don't feel good in their life, who they are. They think that something is beyond. There is something more there that they're not. For some reason, it can be whatever it is. Normally, it's a combination of things. Some people are not happy physically. Some people are not happy with their lives or their families or nationalities, religion, skin color, sexuality, say some diseases. There are many possibilities. Depression, if you analyze the word depression from the etymology, depression means place there is under the surface, right? So, for example, you have a piece of land, and in one part there is a depression in the territory, so it's like under the ground. So that's exactly what it means. Depression would have that feeling that you're falling down, that your life has no meaning at all. That's why depression is so dangerous. One of the reasons that I observed that people feel depressed about, some people don't have vision for their lives. And if you don't have a vision to your life, if you don't have, because, the most important existential question, the most important existential issue we have in our lives is death. We all going to die someday. We all know that it's very hard to deal with death. For that reason, we need to be constantly in movement. We need to be constantly bring things to our lives in order to cover that, to not face reality. And when someone, for example, doesn't have, whether it's the perfect life that you want it to be, or when things don't turn out, your projects, your affections, whatever it is, there is nothing in front of you and death. So you see death all the time. And of course, it's in a metaphorical way, because death is depressive. It's something we are not. It's, you know, one of the most primary instincts that we all have is surviving and reproducing. And of course, if you don't have anything in front of you and death, like bonds with family or a career or success, whatever it is, your role model of life, so you have more possibilities to be depressed. But it's not only that. That's where I differentiate, because there is the psychological part and also the psychiatric part. And if someone has, a lot of psychological issues that are not resolved, but has a good psychiatry, so of course it compensates, and vice versa as well. And some people, they just feel like a loser all the time. They always feel that they can't success. Some people are always complaining about the same problems over the years. Sometimes you meet someone from your family or from your friends or from work, or just someone that you know from any other place, and that person will tell you, for example, some people are constantly in debt, some people are constantly broken, some people are constantly, so it means that that person is in a sort of loop of problems that he can't get rid of. He can't find the exit. I like to call that labyrinth, the labyrinth of Minotaur. It's like the Minotaur, that man who is a cow and a man, and he's in the labyrinth and he can't find the exit. And still there is the Perseus in the labyrinth as well, that sort of persecutes you. Some people feel like in that labyrinth and they can't find solutions for their problems that are so basic. So for example, some people, they have like 10 couples over the years, 10 different couples, and they can't find a way to follow one of them, or they have many works for many years over and over again, and they're never happy about themselves. And in some way, this behavior is a little bit addictive. It means, I mean by that someone who has that behavior, unconsciously, this person is bringing that behavior to his life, because he is attached to that behavior for some reason. It's called in psychology the mechanism of defense. Because if you face the truth, if you face yourself, you're not prepared. So instead of that, you see that hole, that black hole, which produces depression. Well, this was another possibility. In other cases, some people can have stability in their lives and they can have huge losses. Huge losses of something that is very huge for his life or her life. For example, someone who has been married for 50 years, 40 years, for example, and that person was his only unique love, and then you lose that person. Of course, you have big possibilities to walk on the path of depression for some years. So you have to be aware of that. Or for example, if you have a family to take care of and you have your business that it will belong to your father and to your grandfather, and you break that business and you don't see any possibility to escape from that, then you can feel depressed as well. It is depressive. Some people, they feel depressed just because they're perfectionist. They don't understand that life is also gray. It's not only black or white. Some people, they can't move 1 meter in front of themselves, because they want to make everything so perfect, and nothing can be perfect. And doing things perfectly doesn't mean doing things good or doing things properly or doing what you're supposed to do. It means, for example, if you, whatever it is, if you want to make a cake, for example, and of course in the first time you make that cake, the chocolate cake, for example, chocolate pie, it wouldn't be perfect. But if someone is perfectionist, that person will try to make the best chocolate pie in the world. And if it's not the best in the first attempt, that person will feel frustrated. And it has to do as well with the excess of narcissism, of course. A narcissism that, um, you know, blocks that person to accept failure and understanding that failure is part of success and that we cannot jump from 1 to 100. You have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then little by little conquer things. So this jump that you try to do from 0 to 100, it's the empty space. And if you jump all the time and you fall in that empty space, you go straight to depression, because that is depression by itself. Another thing that I find very current in people that are suffering depression is hopelessness. Some people just don't believe, and hope is something so important, so important. And when I say hope, I don't mean faith, I don't mean religion, I don't mean spirituality, I mean hope. If you don't believe in yourself, and even if you lie to yourself, telling yourself that you believe in yourself, but if you know that you don't believe in yourself, then actually you're a hopeless person. And being hopeless is very depressive as well, because you know that you can do everything. It's like being, as we say, swimming against the current, going up the river. You never can achieve it. So that's the thing. Another thing that common is that feeling of sadness, constantly sadness, and sometimes it can be related to weather as well. I realize, for example, that in countries like Russia or Ukraine, for example, or Belarus, for example, when the winter is very hard, I realize that people are more, they have more possibility, they are more sensible to be depressive. I especially realized that when going that countries. For example, cities like Helsinki, Nordic cities as well, where it's really very cold and not so many people, the streets, etc. Instead, for example, in cities like Rio de Janeiro, when you have a sunny, even people from the favelas, from the slums, it's very hard to be depressive in the house if you can just go to the beach and play soccer with your friends and swim, or cities of Mediterranean, for example, like Spain, Greece, and Italy, for example. I realized that the weather can help. It doesn't mean that if you go to cold countries, you'll be depressive. Of course not. I'm just telling that someone who is depressive person, if there is a period of winter and in a cold country, of course, I have more probability to be depressive than if you go to, a tropical country, for example. And finally, I think a low doses of self-esteem can bring depression as well, because self-esteem, which has nothing to do with narcissism. Many people think that narcissism and self-esteem are the same. I do believe that people who are very narcissistic, it's because they don't have self-esteem. Because when you have self-esteem, you just don't need to put emphasis in those points that you want to show off. It's obvious. For example, a girl who is, for example, the prettiest girl of her city or her town, let's say, she wouldn't be trying to show beauty. She wouldn't be trying to prove that to herself or to others. Or maybe she could even hide that a little bit in order to potentiate other things like intelligence, for example. What I mean by that? I mean by that when for some reason you don't feel good in some points, whatever it's physical or professional, so you have a lack of self-esteem. And a lack of self-esteem is absolutely depressive as well. Well, then other thing that, in my opinion, can really cause depression is families which are depressive. Of course, if you are raised in a family full of problems, negativity, and you know, of bad mood, of course you have you have that blueprint. You carry that blueprint over your life, especially your parents, and well, brothers and sisters as well. So of course, I think one of the most important places is the family. And pay attention, it doesn't have anything to do with social level. There are many people that are poor and very happy, and many people that are rich and very depressive. There is nothing to do. There is no relations with social position. One of the things that I've learned is that depression has nothing to do with social level. It does have to do when you lose your money, but it's not about social level. It's about you're changing your social level from one to the other day, which has nothing to do with social level that you belong. But a toxic family can be very depressive, and you can bring that pattern for your whole life as well. So in that case, maybe you should need psychoanalysis or psychotherapy, for example. And well, and finally, um, I I really believe, I strongly believe that the lack of love is very depressive. It's very very hard if you feel loved everywhere, if you have love. And when I say love, I mean all kinds of love: love from family, romantic love, love from friends, love from uh, your employees or your boss, whatever you work with. Love in the pure sense of the word. When you feel loved, when you receive love, and when you are able to give love. So when that love's flow going, coming back to you, and then you are able to do that, you have many possibilities of being protected against depression. Having the sensation that nobody loves you, that nobody cares about you, that nobody minds about you, that you're not important, that you don't make differences in people's life, is something that can be per se depressive as well. So I think love is one of the most important things.